Hey guys, Lavoie here. Welcome to another episode of King of Kings. This is episode 4, and we are going to be looking at why mankind, at least in the past, thinks he needs a king. And I think this is a very important question to ask ourselves because we live in a democratic age and we don't think like this anymore. We think we have choices and we all have a say in this. But a true royal monarch did not have a choice. They were just born into this role, and you have to accept them and accept their choices. Basically, a king's role was to protect his kingdom, to increase the wealth and trade with other countries, as well as take care of the poor and distribute the tribune. So, in other words, kings take care of their people, and that's why I think we want them. But all kings are bad and selfish. But it's in our psyche to want a king. In all our libraries, we have books written about kings and kingdoms, like King Arthur and Cinderella, and you name it. Even Jesus, when he told parables, a lot of it had to do with a kingdom or a king. So it's really important that we wrap our heads around what it is to have a king in order to shed some light on Jesus's kingdom. So the basic need to want to have a king, I think, is it simply is this: man is corruptible, and because we are corruptible, our time on this earth is fleeting. It's short. We all have an expiry date. We're not here for a long time, so we need to figure out this purpose on earth. And I think we turn to kings for that. I mean, we can't stay young. Babies grow into men, and men turn into dust. And I think because of this, we blank our minds of our mortality, and we don't think about it. But we are often reminded of our mortality. There's people around us that pass away and die. And when we go to funerals, we're often thinking and contemplating our own mortalities in this. So with mortality on our minds, we'll jump right into these kings now. These kings, they'll surround themselves with an army, and these armies will protect their kingdoms. But they also surround themselves with holy men, witch doctors, sorcerers, or priests that will advise them of the life to come, the next life, the afterlife, and this trickles down into their kingdoms, and this is where their subjects learn about the afterlife. And what's really interesting is how many of these kings start to believe that they are gods, or somehow tell their subjects that they are gods. And in the mural, there's lots of examples of these kings that can trace their bloodline back to deities, and they themselves believe that they were deities. And only a deity king could rule over his kingdom. All right, now it's time for a little story to illustrate this point a little bit more clear. World War II had 3 rulers on the Axis side of the powers, and that was Mussolini, Hitler, and Hirohito. Now, what's interesting is Hirohito, the emperor of Japan, and they also believed that he was also a deity. And he could trace his bloodline back to the sun god Amaterasu. And of course, if you were in line with the sun god Amaterasu, you could be the emperor of Japan. So soldiers fighting in World War II were willing to lay their life down for their emperor god. And it turns out that after the war, there were lots of war crime trials were brought up. Now, Mussolini was killed by the Italians, and Adolf Hitler had taken his life. But for Hirohito, he was still very much alive, and he was brought up on charges just like everyone else. Now, the person that took most of the blame for this were his generals, claiming that they were the ones that started World War II. As for Hirohito, he was asked to step down from the throne and give up all claims to the goddess Amaterasu and become a mortal king. What they also did was establish him as a constitutional monarch. allowing him to live the rest of his days out as a figurehead for Japan. What I find interesting about Hirohito is he died in 1989, and if you can imagine Adolf Hitler being allowed to live the rest of his life out like Hirohito, which would be totally absurd. But yeah, I do have to say about Hirohito is that he spent the rest of his life making up for the atrocities and the war and the disgrace that was brought upon Japan by really trying to reform things. He wrote books, he studied sciences, and for a mortal, he was actually quite a decent person. The thing about this story is he was claimed a deity, and in the end he died a mere mortal man. So in concluding, all these god kings are dead. And we even know where some of their tombs are and have found their corpses laying in the tombs. What's interesting is their kingdoms are also passed away with them. If you go to Egypt, it's much different than ancient Egypt was. One thing is for sure, all mankind will die. It says in the Bible, "O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory?" The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, which gives us victory through the Lord Jesus Christ. So he's the only one to ever have overcome this problem of dying, decomposing. When he took on human flesh, he proved to us that he was truly a God King. Thanks, I'm Louis Lavoie, and we'll be back with more King of Kings.